go this way. Now, while you were the Chief of Defense Staff, Nigeria faced a lot of multi-front security challenges. We had the kidnapping, we have secessionist agitation, we had terrorism, we had banditry. Now, looking back, what would you say were the toughest institutional and maybe political constraints you had in helping your strategy succeed?
Well, first and foremost, let me thank you for inviting me, and I've said that I'm so delighted to be here. No doubt, the time I, led the armed forces as Chief of Defense Staff, there were a good number of problems. Even before my assumption of that high office, there were also, a lot of challenges. But what I would say in difference to your question is that at the time, all the issues, in your introduction, were quite profound, and even now they are still there, but then, of course, at different degrees. So the Northeast was a huge challenge, and then, of course, Northwest was also arising. And of course, you equally have the Southeast challenge, the IPOB ESN challenge. Then, of course, a little bit of the Niger Delta crisis, especially with respect to, pipeline vandalism, amongst several other things. And of course, these are, in the Southwest, we had, the agitations by, Sunday Igboho's group, the Yoruba Nation, among several others. So there were a plethora of issues that we had to deal with at the same time. And each of these challenges had their own approaches. I mean, they were not, it's not the same approach in dealing with them. And what I found, of course, was that it would appear, and even currently, that the military and the security agencies, it was like, this is a problem, you solve it. When actually the whole essence of security provisioning is everyone's responsibility. But of course, there will be those who will be at the forefront, but there are those who, certainly will give supporting, who will be playing supporting roles. But by and large, I believe that a lot has happened, and then, building on what we did is also improving. I believe that in no time we should be able to have a reasonable peace. I mean, you can't have absolute peace anywhere around the world. What you deal with is relative peace. But at the core, I believe that governance must take greater roots.
Nigeria's security challenges have long had an ethnic and religious coloration,
Correct.
And oftentimes exploited by insurgents to divide communities. Now, and very recently, we saw claims by the United States government suggesting state-backed persecution of Christians in Nigeria, and this has raised serious diplomatic questions and moral questions as well. As a former Chief of Defense Staff who has once coordinated internal security operations, how do you interpret these allegations? Are they a reflection of intelligence failure, poor perception management, or a deeper weakness in Nigeria's counter-terrorism initiative?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that question. No doubt there are issues. I mean, we have killings across board. With, from my personal assessment, has no leaning to any religious. I mean, what I mean is, I do not see it as something targeted at a particular religious, faith. But of course, killing of both Christians and Muslims. But then, for me, I rather see them as Nigerians. Nigerians are being killed on a daily basis for whatever reasons. The motivations for those killings is a different issue entirely. But you see, you must also understand that across the world, international relations deals with, how, nations perceive other nations. And so your perception, the perception of those nations or the assessment that they have is not just from the blues. So this is the reason why you have, missions, that is embassies and high commissions, amongst other consulates that you have across nations, representations, of one country in another country. And so the whole essence is for them to also gather some form of intelligence from the internal reporting, internal developments within the country. I believe that that report which you just seen, which you saw, may not be unconnected with some of the impressions that we have locally, which, I mean, if right here we say this is what it is, then of course you cannot blame some other persons when they say, you know, that this is precisely what it is. In any case, you also saw the, you know, the embarrassing situation relative to the so-called fact-finding, as it were, what the outcome of that report, what it says. So for me, I believe that we should be more concerned with our assessment internally rather than external assessments. And so if we're able to, you know, change the narrative by way of having more inclusive conflict resolution mechanisms, and then, of course, bringing some element of transparency into what we do, greater transparency into what we do, then, of course, the rest of the world will have no choice but to align with our path, you know, in terms of our approaches to problem solving. So for me, I'm not so worried about external assessment. I'm more worried about what we see, and that's you know, leads me to the fact that you know, linking up to the earlier comment that I made, which is that it appears that the military and the security agencies are left as, you know, if I may use the word orphans, to address some of these issues, which is not right. Wars are fought, you know, by the states. It's not institutions that fight war. The campaign plan must be designed by the states and directed by the political leadership, and then, of course, we have the organs, you know, such as the military, the police, and other agencies as tools, if you like, as implementing agencies. And so they are not responsible for answering questions as to what the campaign, you know, speaks to. And I think that's where we've gotten it wrong. And I believe, and of course, whilst I was CDS, we made a lot of changes, you know, hoping that the political, you know, leadership will be able to understand that, to take over that burden, and to see themselves being embedded in the entire campaign matrix. But that has not happened even up to now.
Now, there was this approach just soon after you were appointed the Chief of Defense Staff. You talked about the whole of a nation approach.
Correct.
I want to believe that the whole of a nation approach, it's like you're saying, okay, both the military, the internal policing, the people should be part of fighting all this national challenge we do have. But would you say that when we do not trace some the very sponsors of these acts and bring them to justice, that we're being negligent of one of the very important tools in fighting all these malaise we have?
Yeah. So it would appear so, but then there's no nation, there's no government anywhere that will be aloof. I mean, no agency, responsible agency, will be aloof, you know, when, you know, you have intelligence as to those who are behind certain, you know, criminal acts, and you don't go after them. It's not possible. But the point is, what is the integrity of the intelligence that you have? So it is the level of the efficacy of that intelligence that will help you to be able to do the work. I'm glad that you did mention some of the approaches that, you know, it's also happening anyway. I mean, they are all building blocks, as it were, wherein, you know, we try to see in different, you know, regions, geopolitical zones, to see how we can, you know, bring in, you know, other stakeholders to join hands in doing what we did. But of course, you know, that's not entirely a military task. But then, because of what I said, what I identified earlier on, that's what's quite you know, profound. And I felt, look, let's do this. So we went to the Southeast and began to talk to, you know, both the traditional institutions as well as even retired officers, I mean, across the entire geopolitical zones. And then the building block of that is what you now see. I mean, I'm sure you now see that Southeast is relatively calm, because foundations were laid for us to build it up. The same thing happened in the Niger Delta.